Hi, this is Jesus at P1 Engines, and today we're going to go over an HL 334 carburetor, primarily used on the Parilla Leopard in both Tag Senior and Tag Junior. Just go over the basics on how we service them. First thing you want to do is take the plastic top off. You can see this one's just been ran, still has a little fuel in it, which is okay. For those of you that take this off for the first time, a good way to remember how they go back on is just kind of lay it out as you take it off. For those of you that do it all the time, there's really no need to do that. And this way you can kind of work your way back, because these things pretty much go only on one way. They can stack differently, so if you get them stacked the wrong way, you're not going to get the performance you want. So we throw the old stuff out. And here you have your needle and seat. It's important, the spring here. Usually recommend, if you could, every race. If not, every 2 to 3 races, do a carburetor kit. I tell people it's like changing the spark plug. The old spark plug works, but it's always nice to have something fresh. Once you have it all apart, it's also important to take the needles out. A lot of guys don't. When you take the needles out, you'll see a little rubber grommet O-ring that we replace on both the high speed and the low speed. So once you have it apart, we use the ultrasonic that we put the carburetor in. It gets it all clean. You could use spray clean as well. Just make sure you shoot in through all the openings. Once you have it clean, then you go ahead and put the new stuff in. There's a little copper washer that goes in first. Just hand tight. Put your new needle. Best way to put the needle back in is I usually start this screw. Just give it a couple turns in. The spring here is important. This is what primarily controls your two jets, your low speed and your high speed. If you have a real high tension, high spring in it, it's going to cause the pop-off to be low, which we'll check here in a few seconds. If the pop-off is high, it's going to cause your jets to run lean. It's going to make the engine work hard for the fuel to overcome the stiff spring. If the spring was weak, in other words 0, if we just took the spring out, the engine wouldn't have to work at all to receive any fuel. The fuel would just flow right in. There would be no seal. So we put the spring in. Get the new arm. What I do is set it like that. Push the spring down and then push the bar in. As you practice, it just gets easier. There's an arm height here. The best way to look at it is I set it pretty much flush with the carburetor body. You can't go wrong there. There are adjustments. You can adjust the bar, go down and up. Those things are getting into just how the carburetor works. You can make the carburetor run rich or lean. Once you have that set in, I like to put the needles back in before we check the pop off. So put the new O-ring in. Turn this in. Standard setting. 2 turns, half, 1, half, 2. One thing when you're turning these jets in, you want to make sure when you get down to the bottom, you don't crank on them, because you'll mess up the seat. So once you get down, this high speed we set at 1 turn. Those are standard settings. Once you get to the track, you know, you can adjust that depending on the weather. Here we have our pop-off gauge. So what you want to look at is these carburetors we set about 10 pounds plus or minus 1 pound. So should hold about, that's holding about 11 pounds. When these things are working, there's fuel running through the carburetor, so a good thing to do is always spray a little bit of carburetor. a little bit of WD-40 or fuel if you have it. It gives you a much better reading. So this one here, it's a little over 11 pounds. What we would do is we'd take the spring out, kind of compress it just a little bit to get it down to 11 pounds, or like I said, 10. We usually do 10 plus or minus 1 pound. It's important not to stretch the spring out too much, or also cut it, because it'll give you, might give you the same reading, but as the engine's running, it's going to give you a little bit different performance. The springs, you can buy different weights that'll give you different pop-offs, and it's the best way to adjust it that way. Once you have that set, you go ahead and grab the gaskets. I've done this many times, so I know exactly how they go back on. For those of you that don't do it too often, it's always good to look at the old ones, and like I said, you can place them out, and that way it's a lot easier to put everything back together the right way. So these are simple. There's no trick to them. Once you get that in, you put the 6 screws back in and tighten it on the top. Your screen goes on first. The gasket. We take these off to always check. You want to make sure, a lot of times you get a crack right in here. They'll cause it to suck air and cause the engine to run lean. So we grab a new one. The other thing I recommend is on your needles here, you can either run a zip tie. We use an O-ring. With the vibration of the engine, it'll cause the needles to turn while you're on the track, which is something you don't want. So the O-ring just helps keep a good tension on the needles, because they will rotate, sometimes fall all the way out. And that's basically a rebuild kit on a Leopard carburetor.